Hey there, what do you say there? Beautiful day there. And once again, we are taking a look in this beautiful book. It's called A Year Without Food. We're about to get in the mood, exploring even more with Sir Ray Maor. This is Jerome Shaw, host of the Open Palm Podcast, motivator, meditator, coming back with some wisdom of the ages. This is the Pranic pages. And if you haven't yet heard more, you can definitely explore through the playlist before we say this. And the playlist where you can see the other chapters is called the Pranic pages. So much love. And as we are proceeding, this is an informal reading, so we'll be touching here and there on different points. Challenges. Being a breatharian comes with a unique set of challenges. To truly understand these challenges, we need to imagine what it must feel like to stop eating completely. It's interesting, like we say, the only limitation is our imagination. How will our parents take it? Good question. What will we do when it is lunchtime at work? How would we go on a date? Right? Can you relate? In this day and age when it's all the rage to be able to, hey, let's go here, let's grab a bite there, right? Hey, you want to come out? Want to go out and grab something? Hey, want to go get a cup? Want to grab some coffee? Want to grab some this? Want to grab some that? Like, it's always something between us, Something in between during the conversation, whenever we're feeling another's vibration. But why couldn't it just be this type of co-creation in the field of information, right? Avoiding that annoying constipation. I've specified a few of the bigger challenges that I have experienced myself and witnessed other breatharians overcome. Yes. Just like Martin Luther King said, we shall overcome. There is nothing that one cannot overcome. Realizing that you've already won. Food. Many eating habits are taken for granted, such as eating 3 times a day. Plus snacks, come on. Even a person who eats only once a day cannot easily imagine what it feels like to go for longer periods without solid food. And I could definitely say that many of my friends and family members would not go a day, Come what may, but they would not go a day without eating. Can you believe that? Most people do not fast for even one day in their entire lives. Yes, here we go. It's true. Some religions like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam practice built-in fasting, but many of these practices come from a place of suffering and not necessarily from a place of higher connection to God. So to me, that says one of the best ways to rewire is to come from a place that is higher, realizing that this is not something of lack or scarcity. And this is actually coming from a place that is a calling, so that people feel that fasting might not be that appalling when you come from that calling. Which is why most people seems like we're stalling, Some religions come from a place of suffering and not a place of higher connection. Often, a single day of fasting can result in a craving for food. Imagine going for months without your favorite food, texture, flavor, or taste. A breatharian misses food not as a source of energy, but more as forbidden flavors he or she has decided to leave behind. I just read this book the other day from Star Wars, and Jedi Master Yoda said something along the lines of, very alluring is the forbidden. Very alluring is the forbidden. That the forbidden is a bit seductive, and it can lead one towards the destructive. Some cope with this challenge easily while others struggle with it. The first few months are always the hardest. It's like learning to walk again, right? Like learning to talk again. During this time, certain brain connections seem to break and disappear. It is similar to becoming a vegetarian. Many food sources disappear from your life, and when you go to the supermarket, you have a smaller selection. I resonate with this, Back in the day, it used to be that for me, I was shackled because I had so many options to tackle, right? I walk up in the supermarket and all of a sudden the rotisserie chicken is highlighted. The bags of hot wings are highlighted. The sushi bar is highlighted. This section is highlighted. That section is highlighted. The spaghetti is highlighted. The ramen noodles is highlighted. The Thai food is highlighted. The Chinese is highlighted. Like the pizza is highlighted, right? All of those things were highlighted. Then slowly but surely, the Cinnamon Toast Crunch and the Cheerios and the Lucky Charms and the Cookie Crisp, those were no longer highlighted, right? The 2% milk and, the chocolate milk, those were no longer highlighted. Then all of a sudden, the almond milk, that was highlighted. The coconut water, that was highlighted, right? The soy milk and the, even the oat milk. And then it became the juice, right? The pineapple juice, the blueberry juice, the green juice, the cold pressed, right? Those became highlighted. And slowly but surely, the things that were broadly highlighted started to fade away. And I felt like a brand new being in a brand new day. But since it went away gradually, it was okay. And I wasn't energetically pulled this way and that way, right? You see people eat meat, fish, or chicken and have some recollection of what it used to taste like, but you know that you have chosen not to eat these foods any longer. For a breatharian, it is also like this, times 1,000. When you can walk down the street and see people eat, especially in places like Los Angeles, New York, and, when I was in Italy and Switzerland and Sweden, and like just seeing people in different places, in different spaces, and just seeing the look on their faces, watching them indulge, seeing the stomach bulge, right? But what used to give you that compulsion doesn't give you that anymore. You no longer have the compulsion when you've changed the way your mind functions, right? You no longer have the compunction. You no longer even have the gumption to gorge yourself on a meal. Because within, you've already healed, right? Food is constantly all around us. People focus just about everything around food. Meetings, dates, studying. This means you have constant social reminders of what you are missing. The fear of missing out, right? FOMO. It is probably the reason why many breatharians are loners, and one of the main reasons why most breatharians go back to eating after a short period of time. Definitely. How would you like it if you started a new relationship in your life, prana, but your ex-girlfriend, food, is always there to remind you of your old habits, right? Always in your face. Always every place, right? You want to move on and live your life peacefully, but she keeps showing up and rubbing her existence in your face. Obviously, when you reach a balance with food in your life, all of this becomes much easier. But reaching this point takes some time. One of the benefits will be that you are clear of overthinking, analyzing, and comparing your behaviors to others, right? So you're no longer in analysis paralysis, right? You find more balance when you discover your talents. Social acceptance, it's a big one. I would like to emphasize the issue of social acceptance when living from prana. People display different levels of acceptance, and the adaptation time is individual. Most people simply aren't able to comprehend what it means because of their social programming. I can confess that before I met my guide, even I had great doubts about the existence of breatharians as something more than just a rumor. After my television exposure, it became much easier for me to be socially accepted. Ridicule turned to curiosity, and sometimes even admiration. There are generally 3 types of responses to the subject from a person who has never heard about breatharianism. The first and most common response is disbelief. It is not logical after all, and believing that we can survive without food goes against everything we have been taught, right? To most people, this is very unnatural. This is the knee-jerk response from most people, and they do not want to take a moment to think outside the box. Right? You know, people like that don't even want to think about it, right? You know, they're like, let me drink about it. I don't want to think about it. The response usually comes with a type of ridicule or an expression that says, I think you are either delusional or lying, right? Since in the collective, many do not grasp the perspective, they think somehow you must be being deceptive. The second response comes from people who understand the concept in a superficial way and can comprehend that this type of life is possible. They usually ask questions and attempt to understand what I'm explaining in this book. The third and rarest response comes from future breatharians. They want to know and experience the process themselves. That was me. They believe it the minute they hear about it, and you can already see in their eyes that a change is beginning to take place. So that was actually me, and I wish I would have seen the look on my face when that change internally began to take place, you know, when I realized that I didn't even have to chase, that there was no rush, and I could get out of the race, you know? And it was when I was at that meditation center and I started to enter into a new lifestyle of meditation, relaxation, contemplation, that kind of vibration. And I talked to a lady, one of the nuns at the monastery, and her name was Ellie. And she told me at the time, Sayadaw, the chief monk of the Barwa, which was a mindfulness and detachment center, it's still there today, that he had already been on liquid for the last 2 years. So he had already spent 2 years on liquid, you know, living a lifestyle as a liquidarian. And I'm over here like, what? What's a liquidarian, right? But it was something within me that said, this is true, you know? Even though he was doing something that I never knew, I felt this was something we could do, you know? So I decided in that moment that I would embrace it too. That I would at least give it a try, you know, before asking why. I decided to ask, why not? That was one of the greatest lessons that I was taught. Sometimes a person will be completely fine with the idea that a breatharian can live only on liquids and cut caloric intake to the bare minimum. However, it may be hard to comprehend that a person can survive completely on water and even without water. Each consciousness has its own limits and takes its own time to expand. If I notice that a person needs to grasp the truth step by step, I do my best to go up the ladder slowly. The best approach for a left-brained, logical person like me is to talk about numbers and scientific facts and let people do the math. If my body used up 3,000 calories a day before the process and was in balance and today receives only a few hundred calories and still remains in balance, it means that it still uses 3,000 calories a day. The logical conclusion is that the extra energy comes from an external source. After understanding the source we call prana, I give the example of a breatharian girl in Israel who lived for a year on only water with occasionally contained mint. This usually breaks them in. When you explain breatharianism to someone, I recommend you take time to clarify all the different aspects, including the science and the spirituality. You should expect some people to resist what you are telling them, and this is completely okay. It is natural and understandable. You are bringing down a house of cards. For some people, it is just too much to take in. Social challenges. Social challenges are considered the greatest obstacle in your life as a breatharian. In the process itself, you are alone and nothing really affects you. You are with your own thoughts. The real challenge starts when you go back home and have to adjust to a new vision of yourself in your former life. A great change takes place inside when you shift to a no-food mentality. It is like traveling around the world. You simply do not come back the same person who departed. Each change that happens for the betterment is for the betterment of yourself and is blessed by, but incorporating your new habits might be difficult where others are concerned. It's one of the best lessons I had learned. When you come back from the process, the people around you do not know what you are going through and do not necessarily understand your quest for a higher goal. There is judgment. One cannot simply understand breatharianism in a 1-minute explanation, and you do not really want to explain yourself and your lifestyle to everyone all the time. I actually will go out of my way to not have to explain, to be able to sustain and maintain myself around others and not play the brain games, right? Not have to get into debates, you know. That's the way that I usually feel great, to not even participate in the debate. These are the steps that I started to take. There is judgment. So this is especially the case when you notice that most of the explanations are met with judgment, disbelief, and misunderstanding. Reminds me of Morpheus when he was talking to Neo on the roof in the jump program in the Matrix. You have to let it all go, Neo. Fear, doubt, and disbelief. Free your mind. One of my favorite scenes. A good 2 or 3 hour lecture might cover some of the basics of Breatharianism, something that cannot be achieved in a casual conversation. Family and friends may judge you because they worry about your health, right? You know, loved ones, they just want to see you doing good, even if the things you're doing are not really understood, right? It seems not to matter to them that you feel great, have more energy than they do, your blood tests are normal, and there's nothing lacking in your body. Your parents might be old school and want to see you eat Saturday dinners with the family. Holidays can be adventurous when you tell a cousin who has not seen you for a long time what you've been up to. This, of course, depends on the consciousness level and open-mindedness of your friends and family. You know, like they say, how a mind is kind of like a parachute. You know, it doesn't do you any good closed, right? It's not really going to help you. I know an ex-breatharian who went back to eating because her parents did not accept the way she looked in the first month of her breatharian lifestyle. This is big, you know, because if your level of acceptance of yourself is not up to par, then the trend is we tend to not go that far. If you cannot accept yourself, then you will be swayed by the judgment of someone else, right? They forced her to see a doctor, forced her to weigh herself, and she had to show her mother that she was consuming fruit drinks to make them understand that something was going into the system. This is not an easy place to be in, and my heart goes out to anyone who's in that place, because that's one of the hardest things I ever had to face, was the negative energy, that negative wave of energy that came over me when my mother and father had an intervention, you know. Yeah, that was tough. That was rough. For me, it wasn't a great challenge. I come from a very open-minded family. Both parents accepted my decision, and we have a lot of trust in my family. That's awesome. I'm not saying that my mother was extremely happy to see that I'd lost almost 10 kilos in under a month, but she knows I'm a grown man, constantly seeking adventures and challenges. We have a mutual agreement that I can be trusted. My sister is a new age hippie, just like I am, and she had heard about Breatharianism before my process. We both knew in our hearts that it was possible. So why not one of us? See, I love that, you know? Instead of asking why, ask why not, you know? I still think that she might one day join me in this adventure. The social challenges usually occur at the beginning of a breatharian lifestyle, when we are in the phase of limiting ourselves. For me, this first phase lasted for a year, during which time I chose to exist on very small amounts of liquid and no solid food. Today, after a few years have passed, I generally eat in social situations, such as the ones I described above. In most social situations, the simplest and truest explanation would be to simply say that you do not feel hungry. Right, you could just say you're fasting, right? If somebody's asking, just say, hey, I'm fasting, right? Because people usually understand that today, when fasting is in every major religion that we can think of, you know? it's usually understandable. But if not, see what you got. It is our wish to be understood, to be accepted, and to feel normal with our friends and family. If you are a loner like the holy Indian nomads who choose this lifestyle alone on a mountain and in nature away from civilization, you do not need to worry, since you will have no one to judge you. Right? No one to budge you, no one to nudge you, no one to judge you. Wouldn't that be grand, right? One needs to be mentally strong and know oneself to resist social standards and the need to be accepted as normal. To withstand ridicule and persist in one's inner knowing. Hunger and thirst. As mentioned previously, a breatharian does not really get hungry or thirsty. Part of the process is to understand that hunger and thirst are both controllable sensations. Where there is no dependency on food any longer, there is no need to feel hungry. However, a breatharian can get hungry if they get emotional, feel bad, or start eating again. Yeah, as soon as you start eating again, you kind of feel the energy depleting again, And it's almost like a recurring. It continues when you let that back within you, When you let the food back within you, all those hunger pangs tend to continue. The general rule of thumb is not to drink or eat if you are hungry or thirsty, to avoid recreating the association between caloric intake and the sensations you are feeling. Not feeling full. This might be hard to understand for most people. Certainly was for me. Since a breatharian does not feel hungry, they also do not feel full. It means that if they drink or eat something, they will need to recalibrate themselves about when to stop. The stomach stops signaling the brain the "I am full" message, and it takes a while to get used to this in-between sensation. That was one of the most confusing feelings for me. I'm telling you, and since it was so confusing, it actually led me to abusing my body in ways that I had never done before. I just kept having more and more and more and more and more. Back after the judgment from my folks, with the words that they spoke and the negative wave that I received, I started to go back into binging. Cycles, up and down, in and out, back and forth. Roller coaster, right? Roller coaster of emotions. And I never knew how to get out of that. I never thought that I'd be where I am right now. I didn't know how. And what he's saying there is so true, because after going without for so long and after feeling the energy so strong, my body had adapted. It was like, since my body adapted to that feeling, when I put food back into my body, it was like confusion. It was like, wait, I don't feel hungry. I'm eating this for pleasure, just for taste. But somehow it felt like it was going to waste because I wasn't full. So there, on the one hand, there was no more pull. I was just eating out of emotions, but I still wasn't full, right? So can you just imagine having the emotions and just going through the motions of consumption, but you've already changed your chemistry and the way that your body functions. So now it's like there's a dilemma on your hands. You don't really know what to do, because what you've put inside you just goes right through. And there were times where it felt like it evaporated, like it just dissolved. So this was a big problem that I wanted to solve. I was like, how do I feel normal again, right? That was one of the biggest dilemmas. I was like, what is going on here? I feel like I'm going crazy. I put something in, it's gone. I don't know where it went. I don't feel full. There's no payoff, right? There's no more pleasure. Weakness. The first few months of being a breatharian might be accompanied by physical weaknesses while your body is learning how to adapt to this new energy. Each body is individual, and gaining back your weight and physical strength depends on many factors, such as physical health prior to the process, mental attitude, and genes. A breatharian who feels weak needs to remind himself or herself that it is only temporary and will eventually pass. Right? Just tell yourself, this feeling is not going to last. This is temporary. This too shall pass. One usually gets back into shape between 2 to 12 months. So let go of your fear and give it a year. I felt weak for the first 2 months, but kept up regular exercise to force my body back into shape, which it did, and the feeling passed. People who undergo the Pranic living group initiation regain their physical strength more quickly. This is because of the breathing exercises and special meditations. So with respiration and meditation, you can get back to that feeling, you know? Get back to that physical. In general, our body always wants to take the easier path. And the easiest path is going back to eating normally. That is the path of least resistance, right? So in the beginning, it will make anything sweet taste really good because it wants the immediate energy sweet things provide. Oh man, you know, that feeling resides, the immediate gratification. That's a big one. Remember that this weakness is an ongoing feeling that may wear some people down and cause them to give up. Mind games, here we go. A mind game is a game that our ego mind plays. The ego wants to control us, and there is no true spiritual growth when the ego is in control of our lives. Mind games can include anything that makes you change your mind quickly. Anything that whispers in your ear. Come on, Ray. You don't really need this. Give up. Why are you doing this to yourself? Right? Those little voices. There's always choices. For me, one of the biggest mind games was the caloric game. I counted every calorie going into my body. Wow, I can't imagine. Trying to understand how it was possible, I was still using 3,000 calories a day, while only allowing several hundred to go in, while gaining my weight back, right? That's a big blow for the mind, to see your body gaining weight in time and to see you find yourself becoming realigned with what you had without any consumption, you know? Without the food that you used to have before. You step on the scale and you're like, what? More? Right? I weigh more than before, right? That can be a mind blow, you know? I remember I had a partner at the time, and we were both in practice with this pranic living. And the energy that was giving, and I remember her saying, whoa, I think my butt getting big. Like, she was like looking at herself in the mirror like, what is this? Like, how am I gaining weight in the back? Oh man. Mind games. My left-oriented brain was not satisfied at all, and it was starting to get to me. Other mind games can be thinking that you are not suited to being a breatharian, thinking that your girlfriend won't love you any longer, and other thoughts that come from your lower self. Learning to let go. A great challenge is to let go of any concerns and to allow a greater power than yourself to control your life. It is not easy for us to be humble and to admit that we do not always understand what is going on, that there may be greater and much more sophisticated things in our reality. A good example is the fact that right after the process, you lose some weight. You need to be aware of this ahead of the time and be mentally prepared to look in the mirror and see your skinny self, which will elicit comments. Accept that there is nothing you can do about it, since some force greater than yourself controls the process, and that sometime in the unknown future, you may or may not receive some of your weight back. Learning to completely let go and trusting a greater power is a big challenge at first. After some time, you will understand this rule can be generalized to many things in life, and that in the moment you truly let go, trusting a greater power and adopting the mentality of whatever happens, happens for the best, things start to change for the better. Completely let go. Trust that you are constantly being guided by your higher self via your intuition. Take notice when a subject comes up twice in the same day. Take notice of the people you randomly encounter in your life. What can they teach you? Right? How can they reach you? What can you teach them? How can you reach them? See the lesson behind every door, even the ones you think do not exist. Developing a spiritual ego. After the process, you might think that your ego has been reduced as a result of some new insights, which I will not elaborate on here. A new type of ego emerges, the spiritual ego. Dun dun dun! Bum bum bum. The spiritual ego is the one that tells you, ha! I have now attained a higher level of consciousness and understanding on how the world works, right? I have arrived. You now know how to believe in something so badly and against any logic that you are a master of your own creation and the laws of the world bend to your will and desire. So you may have just replaced your regular know-it-all ego with another type. This is a bit like religious people arguing about who amongst them knows the truth best, right? Who among you, cast the first stone, let it be known. The challenge is to remain humble in front of this great power that you know nothing about, and to keep reminding yourself that we are all essentially equal. We are all one. Each and every one is a soul on its journey back to the source. Of course. I could have been the other guy just as he could have easily been me. There is no difference between any of us. There is no right or wrong, no absolute singular truth. In addition, developing a spiritual ego might place more distance between you and others, something that existing social challenges already accomplish. A breatharian is usually humble since he or she is required to completely let go, trust the universal spirit, inner God, for guidance on the path. Some of us develop a know better attitude about spiritual development. Some really do know better, but they probably need a bit more humble and quiet about it. With a quote by Lao Tzu, author of the Tao Te Ching, "Those who know do not speak, and those who speak do not know." And we'll end it here for the moment. Thank you for choosing this moment. You own it. And thank you for loving your body, for you own it. This has been Jerome Shaw, once again, taking wisdom of the ages from one of today's modern sages. Appreciate you for listening to the Pranic Pages.